Borders. It looked so simple on a map. Thin lines, neat shapes, clean divisions. But in reality, borders are messy. They are scars, they are lifelines, they are battlegrounds of memory. And in Southeast Asia, one country's borders tell a story unlike any other: Thailand. Thailand is the only nation in the region never colonized by a Western power, a proud survivor. But survival came at a cost, and that cost was land, influence, and a constant negotiation with its neighbors. From the misty mountains of the north to the turquoise waters of the south, Thailand's frontiers have been shaped by ancient kingdoms, colonial treaties, and modern politics. And time and again, these borders have become flashpoints for conflict. Today, we're going to journey across all 4 of Thailand's borders, with Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, and Malaysia, to uncover why disputes keep flaring up and why history here never really stays in the past.
If you want to understand Thailand's conflicts, start with the land itself. Imagine Thailand as the middle house in a row of old family homes. Every fence line has a story, and every neighbor remembers it differently. To the west and north, the mountains of Myanmar, rugged and remote. To the northeast, the Mekong River, separating Thailand from Laos. To the southeast, the Dangrek Mountains, rising like a wall between Thailand and Cambodia. And to the south, the narrow Isthmus of Kra, leading into Malaysia's tropical forests. These natural features are both shields and gateways. They protect Thailand from invasion, but they also invite disputes. Rivers change course. Mountain passes open paths for traders and for armies. And when the land itself shifts, the question of where one country ends and another begins becomes more than a matter of cartography. It becomes a matter of identity.
Before colonial powers arrived with their precise maps and boundary stones, Southeast Asia was a world of shifting influence. Historians call it the mandala system. Not fixed borders, but spheres of power radiating from a center. Kingdoms like Sukhothai, Ayutthaya, Lana, and the Khmer Empire overlapped, their influence waxing and waning like the tides. In this world, a village might pay tribute to one king one year and to another the next. Loyalties were fluid, and so were the borders. But when modern nation-states emerged, these fluid zones became contested territories. The watercolor of influence was forced into the rigid lines of a political map, and the colors didn't always match.
In the late 19th century, Britain and France carved their empires into Southeast Asia. Siam, today's Thailand, was caught in the middle. To avoid colonization, it ceded territory in a series of treaties. The Franco-Siamese treaties of 1904 and 1907 drew borders that still stand today. But these lines were often drawn in distant offices, based on incomplete surveys and flawed maps. They ignored the realities of local geography and the lives of the people who lived there. The result was a patchwork of borders that looked neat on paper but messy on the ground, and those messy edges became flashpoints for future disputes.
High in the Dangrek Mountains, where the land rises sharply from the Cambodian plains to meet the Thai plateau, there is a place where stone meets sky. The Preha Vihar Temple, 1,000 years old, stands like a sentinel above the clouds. For Cambodians, Preha Vihar is a jewel of their heritage. For many Thais, it is part of their own historical tapestry. This dual claim has made the temple more than a monument, it has made it a symbol. In 1962, the International Court of Justice ruled that the temple lay within Cambodian territory, yet the land surrounding it remained a gray area. In 2008, when UNESCO recognized Preha Vihar as a World Heritage Site under Cambodia's nomination, old wounds reopened. Soldiers were deployed. Gunfire echoed where monks once chanted. And yet, when the sun sets over Preha Vihar, casting long shadows across its ancient stones, it is hard not to feel the weight of time. Empires have risen and fallen here. Borders have shifted, but the temple endures.
The Mekong River is more than a border. It is a living artery, a restless giant that has shaped the lives of millions for centuries. Rising high in the Tibetan Plateau, it winds its way through China, Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam before spilling into the South China Sea. Along the stretch between Thailand and Laos, the Mekong is both a connector and a divider. For the people who live along its banks, the river is a source of food, water, and trade. But the Mekong is not a fixed thing. It shifts with the seasons, swelling in the monsoon, shrinking in the dry months. Sandbanks appear and disappear, channels deepen or vanish, and when the river moves, so too does the question of where one country ends and another begins. For decades, Thailand and Laos have quietly debated ownership of these shifting islands and sandbars. The roots of these disputes stretch back to the colonial era, when French Indochina and the Kingdom of Siam agreed that the Mekong would serve as their dividing line. But the river was never still, and the maps drawn in distant capitals could not keep pace with its changes.
The northern frontier between Thailand and Myanmar is a land of mist-covered mountains, winding rivers, and dense teak forests. Mae Sai, Thailand's northernmost town, sits at the edge of this frontier. A single bridge connects it to Taki Lake in Myanmar, a bridge for trade, tourism, and, at times, tension. Ethnic Shan, Aka, and Lahu communities have lived here for generations, their cultures blending across the border. But the same mountains that shelter them have also hidden insurgent groups, smuggling routes, and refugee flows. For the people here, the border is both a lifeline and a barrier, a place where family ties, economic survival, and national politics intersect.
In Thailand's far south, the border with Malaysia runs through a region of palm plantations, fishing villages, and mosques. Here, the majority Muslim population shares deep cultural and family ties with communities across the border. But this shared heritage has also fueled separatist movements, with some groups seeking greater autonomy or even independence. The result has been decades of low-level insurgency, punctuated by moments of violence and by efforts at peace that never quite hold. History is not just remembered, it's taught. And in Thailand, as in every nation, the classroom is where the seeds of national identity are planted. In Thai schools, history lessons often emphasize the nation's resilience, the proud fact that Thailand was never colonized, the victories against invading forces, the skill of kings and diplomats who defended sovereignty. Maps on the wall show borders as fixed and unquestionable, the rightful shape of the nation. Across the border, in Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Malaysia, the same events are told differently. A battle celebrated in one country might be remembered as a tragedy in another. A treaty held as a diplomatic triumph in Bangkok might be seen as an injustice in Vientiane or Phnom Penh. These differences are not just academic. They shape how young people see their neighbors as partners, rivals, or even historical adversaries. And when disputes flare, these ingrained narratives can harden positions. Each side believes it already knows the truth because it was taught as fact from childhood. In this way, the classroom becomes a quiet front line in the battle over borders, not with weapons, but with words, maps, and the stories a nation chooses to tell about itself.
Borders are not only lines of division, there are also lines of opportunity. In Thailand's border towns, the hum of commerce is constant. Trucks rumble through checkpoints loaded with fruit, textiles, and electronics. Boats ferry produce across rivers. Markets overflow with goods from both sides. But alongside the official trade, there is another economy, one that thrives in the shadows. Smuggling routes snake through forests and along back roads, carrying everything from untaxed fuel and timber to counterfeit goods and at times more dangerous cargo. For some communities, these informal networks are not just a temptation, they are a necessity. Remote villages may rely on cross-border trade, legal or not, to survive. And for those who live here, the border is less a barrier than a gateway, a place where livelihoods are made in the space between two nations' laws. This dual economy, open and hidden, is part of what makes borderlands so complex. They are places of exchange, but also of evasion, of opportunity, but also of risk.
Even in times of peace, borders can bristle. Along disputed stretches, patrols move in pairs or squads, eyes scanning the horizon. Watchtowers rise over contested ground, their flags snapping in the wind. Sometimes, a single incident, a fishing boat seized, a patrol straying too far, can ignite a diplomatic storm. In these moments, the border becomes a stage, and every move is watched, recorded, and interpreted as a signal. For the soldiers stationed here, the job is part guard duty, part performance. They are the visible embodiment of the nation's claim, a reminder to anyone watching, including the other side, that this land is watched and will be defended.
For those who live along Thailand's borders, the disputes of politicians are only part of the story. Daily life is shaped by the rhythms of farming, fishing, and family, not by the lines on a map. Here, people cross back and forth for weddings, funerals, and festivals. Languages mix in markets, and recipes blend in kitchens. A Lao lullaby might be sung in a Thai home. A Cambodian spice might flavor a Thai curry. The border is both a barrier and a bridge. It can separate families, but it can also connect them. And for many, it is simply home, a place where identity is layered and where belonging is defined not by nationality alone, but by community.
Why do these disputes keep returning? Part of the answer lies in history, in treaties signed a century ago, in maps drawn by foreign hands that never walked the land they divided. Part lies in politics, in leaders who find unity in rallying against an external rival. And part lies in the land itself, in rivers that shift, in mountains that hide, and cultures that overlap. Borders here are not just about territory. They are about memory, pride, and the stories nations tell themselves. And those stories are not easily changed. As long as history is seen through the lens of rivalry, and as long as geography continues to shift beneath our feet, the disputes will remain, sometimes quiet,
sometimes loud, but always present.
Yet conflict is not the only path. Across Thailand's borders, there are also stories of cooperation, joint patrols that share intelligence, markets where traders from both sides work side by side, cultural exchanges that celebrate shared heritage. When leaders choose dialogue over confrontation, and when communities are given a voice in shaping their future, the border can become a place of connection rather than division. The challenge is to make these moments the rule, not the exception, to build trust slowly through small acts of cooperation that over time can change the story the border tells.
Thailand's borders are more than lines. They are living histories. They carry the weight of ancient kingdoms, colonial bargains, and modern politics. Conflicts here are not inevitable, but they are persistent. And until history is seen not as a weapon, but as a shared inheritance, the lines on the map will remain more than just lines. But perhaps one day, the stories told on each side will begin to converge, and the borders will be remembered not for the conflicts they caused, but for the connections they preserved.